Dangerous Helene is headed for Florida. Good evening, I'm Mike Naso with this Wednesday evening update on our dangerous Hurricane Helene. Taking a look at the Gulf of Mexico, Helene is obviously the main focus, getting stronger there. We're starting to see the eye on this beautiful true color visible imagery, and notice the outflow expanding here. This is a very large hurricane, a very powerful, dangerous storm, and it is only going to get stronger. The National Hurricane Center is now forecasting a Category 4 hurricane at landfall in the Florida Big Bend region, which is very rare for that region, and that is going to have very devastating impacts. We'll talk about all that. We also have John. Remember John, major hurricane into Mexico? It spit back out and regenerated, should become a hurricane again and make another landfall in Mexico, devastating, catastrophic rainfall and flooding for Mexico. But here's the latest on Hurricane Helene. Now, this is as of 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. Helene was at 22.5 north, 86.6 west. Winds of 85 miles per hour. That's a Category 1. It is moving north at 12 miles per hour. It did have that northwest component. Now it's moving north, and that should become northeast through time, and it is going to just catapult itself right into the Florida coastline sometime Thursday evening. So we're talking about 24 hours, and this is it. This is it. We do have hurricane warnings out from Anclote, Florida, all the way over to areas there of Mexico Beach. And we have a hurricane watch further down the coast, including Tampa Bay. And that's from areas there of Englewood to Anclote River. So again, all eyes are on that area of Florida, which is really going to take a fierce battering from this hurricane. It should still be a hurricane as it pushes into Georgia, and even though the winds will weaken by Friday and Saturday, this sucker is going to loop around a low-pressure area and cause a significant flood threat for the southeastern United States. I'll talk about that. Here's the visible satellite imagery, and there was some dry air intrusion, so the eye is not perfectly well defined, but it's still only a Category 1, but through time, it will intensify. The Air Force recons will be flying out there all throughout Wednesday night, all throughout Thursday, giving us the latest readings to see how strong Helene is getting, as well as what the environment will be like around it. Here's the radar out of Cuba. As the system moved on up, it was very, very close to the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it moved into the Gulf of Mexico, and now it is over water, intensifying. Now, where should we see a direct landfall? Well, this is the Hurricane Center's track as of 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. It makes it a Category 4 hurricane, 130 miles an hour, about 24 hours from now, around 5 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday. But the Hurricane Center notes it could be strengthening as it's coming ashore, even more than that. And they have the official landfall here right over St. George Island, the Barrier Island, right offshore Apalachicola, and then just zooming straight in between Panama City and Tallahassee into areas there of Georgia. Columbus, you guys are squarely in the path. And look at this. 36 hours from now, still an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane with winds gusting over 105 miles per hour at least. So the fast-forward motion is going to allow these winds to really, really spread inland throughout areas there of Georgia and even Alabama. Into Tennessee, it should still be a tropical storm. So again, anybody in this area needs to be ready for prolonged outages, tree damage, power line damage, and a lot of problems. But the big threat at the coast is the storm surge. With a Category 4 hurricane in this area, between Carabel and Suwannee River, 15 to 20 feet. That is above normal tide levels. 15 to 20 feet above normal tide levels, and that does not include crashing waves. So a Category 4 hurricane with those winds, crashing waves, 20 feet of surge, anybody in these low-lying areas needs to evacuate and do so right away. All preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. Now, with a Category 4 hurricane, what kind of damage are we talking? Category 4, that's devastating to catastrophic with the wind. So anything near the coast, the wind's going to blow away if the water doesn't get to it first. Severe weather will also be a threat. We're starting to see some dangerous thunderstorms popping up here in Florida. They're used to storms, but this is not going to be the normal, oh, the weather's nice until 2 hours before the hurricane. Helene is a large storm, and that's going to spread out the winds, and we're going to have nasty weather. I have a feeling this is going to be a very sinister hurricane. This is going to be one of those where the weather is just really rough even though the hurricane's offshore, and then it's just going to get worse and worse and go downhill until we get the core of the storm intact. We also have had some really heavy rainfall ahead of the hurricane, which is not good because you don't want it to waterlog the ground, and then boom, here comes more rain. But the rain, look at this. This is over the next 7 days. Look at how wet it's going to be all throughout the southeastern U.S., Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Kentucky, even over to Missouri and Arkansas. The flood threat will be very, very real with this hurricane. Now, what's steering it? Obviously, it's going to feel the ridge back off from this trough, and this thing is going to catapult into the coast and loop around just like that, and it's really going to accelerate. I don't think you realize 130, 140 mile an hour hurricane moving at that speed, at least 20 miles per hour, I'm assuming. That's going to spread those winds inland, and then it's going to loop back around like that. So everybody needs to listen to local officials, listen to the emergency managers, where you would go, what you would do. The clock is ticking as of Wednesday night. We don't have a lot of time. This is not a weekend event. This is 24 hours from now, and Helene means business. The key messages from the National Hurricane Center, most of which I've touched on. Number one, a catastrophic and deadly storm surge is likely along portions of the Florida Big Bend coast. The inundation could be as much as 20 feet above ground level with destructive waves. People forget that you get huge waves with a Category 4 hurricane on top of 20 feet of water on top of the normal tide levels. There you go. There is a danger of life-threatening surge along the remainder of the Florida west coast. Remember, I didn't even touch on south of there. Water rises 3 to 5 feet for Marco and Sanibel, 4 to 7 feet to Longboat Key. This is going to be a very nasty day tomorrow on the Florida west coast. Residents in that area should follow advice given by local officials, and if you're told to evacuate, please do so. Secondly, potentially catastrophic hurricane-force winds are expected within the eye wall of Helene where it makes landfall. Remember, a Category 4 hurricane, those Category 4 winds won't be spread out 100 miles. They'll be right around that eye, but wherever that eye goes, you guys should prepare for the worst. Category 4, okay? Damaging and life-threatening hurricane-force winds, especially in gusts, will penetrate well inland over northern Florida and southern Georgia late Thursday and Thursday night. We have the hurricane warning, strong wind gusts into North Georgia and the Carolinas and the high terrain of the Appalachians. Catastrophic and life-threatening flash and urban flooding, including landslides, are possible throughout the southern Appalachians through Friday. You don't hear about landslides a lot in the United States, but they do happen. Considerable to locally catastrophic flash and urban flooding is likely for northwest and north Florida and southeast throughout Friday. So again, that's a problem. And we still do have the Yucatan Peninsula under that hurricane warning in areas there from Cabo Catoche to Tulum. As the hurricane moves away, we will still see tropical storm conditions over western Cuba and then the Yucatan through tomorrow. But again, all of this is with Helene. John, I wanted to touch on Tropical Storm John, 16.8 north, 101.5 west, winds of 50, drifting north at 3. That should become a hurricane again and make landfall on the other side of Mexico in the Pacific. But the bad news has been this thing is moving so slow that this rainfall is just prolonging the agony along the Mexican coast. Look at this, 20 to 30 inches of rainfall in areas there of the Mexican coast. You want to talk about the threat of landslides in a place like Mexico, that mountainous terrain, very, very dangerous. But the focus from here on out, the next 24 hours, is going to be on Helene. As the sun goes down there on the Gulf of Mexico, a very ominous-looking storm, Hurricane Helene, forecast to make landfall in Florida as a Category 4 storm. I'm Mike Naso, and I'll talk to you next time.